Because there are 25 roller coasters that I'll be going through, I will be going through them rather quickly. So if you would like more in-depth thoughts about each of these rides, you're in luck because I have individual reviews for each and every one of them on my channel. So all that being said, let's begin. Taking the number 25 spot is Shambhala at Portaventura. This is my favorite B&M hypercoaster, and so as a result of it taking the 25th spot, you will not see any other B&M hypercoasters on this list. But I really enjoy this because all of the floater airtime it gives really is quite impressive. It's a very fun roller coaster. In addition to being gorgeous, it really is a spectacular ride, as is every single coaster on this list. Next, we have our first wooden coaster to make my top 25. This is Gold Striker. It's a GCI twister coaster at California's Great America. One thing that's really neat about this ride is how many tunnels it utilizes. It's constantly twisting in and around itself. Some sharp pops of ejector airtime. It really is a non-stop awesome experience. Twisted Timbers is taking the number 23 spot. This is a new for 2018 coaster by Rocky Mountain Construction that opened at my home park, Kings Dominion. This coaster is all about the airtime, so many huge hills that really send you flying up out of your seat. It also has that unique barrel roll drop that is really fun. At number 22 is a coaster that I think will surprise many people because this is X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. And really, my opinion of this ride has just changed so much over the past few years. The first time I rode it, I didn't like it. But the more and more I rode it, the more I realized how insane this ride is. Yes, it is not the smoothest, but man, this ride low-key freaks me out. It is so massive. The rotating seats is absolutely disorienting. It is madness. And when you have the music and the fire effects going, it just makes for a really surreal experience. This really is one of those rides that the more you ride it, I think the more you'll like it. And just barely missing out from the top 20 is Der Schwerdeskirchen at Hansa Park in Germany. While I did not enjoy this ride nearly as much as some of the other people in my group, I still loved how insane this ride is. It is probably one of the most intense coasters I've ever ridden. It starts off completely enclosed and then sends you soaring up into the sky. And the entire layout is really broken up into two halves. The first part that is really tall and then the next part that is really low to the ground. So the layout really is one of the strongest points of this ride, in addition to having amazing theming. At number 20 is Ghost Rider Knott's Berry Farm. I absolutely love this roller coaster. I never rode it before the retrack by Great Coasters International, but every time I ride it, I am amazed at how much it powers through the layout. It is so intense and gives an incredible night ride. And unlike some coasters, the best part about Ghost Rider is actually the second half of the ride after what used to be the mid-course brake run. When you're down low to the ground, going in and out of the structure, it really makes for a fast-paced experience that leaves you wanting to immediately get back in line after you get off. At number 19 is Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. This is one of the most unique roller coasters on this list because the second drop is actually bigger than the first. And it started off as a completely different layout featuring inversions. It was called Steel Phantom, but then after it was redone by Morgan, they took out all the inversions and replaced them with airtime hills. And the airtime hills are crazy because the lap bar that you have leaves you feeling pretty exposed, so you really come up flying sharply up out of your seat. It is amazing, and I love how much it uses the terrain. At number 18 is Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. This is my favorite coaster in the park, as well as my favorite coaster by GCI. It has an out and back layout with some top-notch pacing, and every twist and turn really throws your body around. I think going in, people were underwhelmed with it just because of the hype with the shed, but once you look past that, the layout itself is absolutely amazing, and like Ghost Rider, it gives a fantastic night ride. At number 17 is Terran, probably the most themed ride on this list. The entire coaster is surrounded by rockwork, and because the layout is so twisty, you're constantly crossing over and under yourself. You don't know where you just came from and where you're about to go. Terran is all about the rapid transitions, which is why this is one of the most visually impressive coasters in the world. At number 16 is another Intamin Blitz coaster. This is Maverick at Cedar Point. This ride is definitely more intense than Terran, but has some similarities in that this coaster also has a few launches. The second one being my favorite part of the ride, through a tunnel, blasting you to the left. It also has a beyond vertical drop, which gives you some crazy air if you're in the back seat. And I love how small the trains are because that really allows the ride to fling you all over the place. And it used to be my favorite coaster at Cedar Point until another ride was built that we'll get to later. At number 15 is Twisted Colossus. And I used to have this ride in my top 10. However, more often than not, I don't get a dueling experience on this ride. When Twisted Colossus does duel, it is absolutely one of the greatest roller coasters in the world. And not dueling is still fun, but just doesn't have the same impact. And as I'm on it, I just find myself wondering, am I gonna duel this time? Or, darn, I'm so mad, I wish we were dueling. And so because of that, I find it a little frustrating, which is why I didn't put this ride higher up. But even when it doesn't duel, it's still really fun. And because of its layout, sending you around both times, it's one of the coolest experiences you can ever have. At 14 is Railblazer at California's Great America. This is the only Raptor coaster by RMC that I've ridden. There's another one down in San Antonio, but what I liked about Railblazer was really its pacing. I could not believe how fast you whip through some of these elements. And because it is a single rail coaster, all of those elements are taken sharply, slamming you from one direction to the other. And it's one of the few coasters that I don't care if they continue to clone them because it is absolutely phenomenal. Next is an Intamin mega coaster called Expedition G-Force at Holiday Park in Germany. This was my favorite steel coaster I rode in Europe. It was what I wish Millennium Force was. Even though this ride is almost half the height of Millennium Force, its layout is so much stronger. It gives some fantastic airtime. That twisting drop is crazy in the back seat. And so when you slam into that brake run, you're like, wow, that was an experience. It's a ride that as an American, I'm sad that it's all the way in Germany because I loved it so much and I would love to ride it more often. The Intamin coaster I have just above it is Skyrush at Hershey Park. I put this ride right up there with Carnan in terms of intensity. It is by far one of the most intense roller coasters ever built. The ride is absolute madness. If you're sitting in the back left seat, going over that drop feels like a car crash. It is ridiculous. It's one of those coasters that you get off and you're like, how is this allowed to exist? It is so insane. I know some people really don't like it because of the restraints. So in a way, this ride is a love it or hate it, and I'm definitely someone who loves it. Barely missing the top 10 is Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. This was a coaster that when you watch a point of view video, it looks good. But compared to some of the other rides out there, you're like, oh, I don't know, it looks good and all, but nothing crazy. But then when you ride it, you're like, wow, that exceeded my expectations. It was the first one coaster to go upside down 3 times. It has a double barrel roll ending. And this has also got to be one of my top 3 favorite night rides in the world simply because it is pitch black out there. You cannot see a thing. And if you ride it when it is hauling, it will leave you speechless. So we've made it to our top 10. At number 10 is Storm Chaser Kentucky Kingdom. By far, this is the most aggressive RMC coaster out there. I don't know what Kentucky Kingdom does to grease their wheels or run this ride faster, but man, it's one of the coasters that you get off and you're like, I have an airtime headache. Just because this sends you up, flying up out of your seat so many times. That trick track double up towards the end of the ride really slams you around. And like Twisted Timbers, this also has the barrel roll drop. So I can understand why so many people love this ride. Just because the way they run it is what makes it so good. But at number 9 is Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. Now, I haven't ridden this coaster since 2017, and I've heard that the ride at the moment is not running quite as good as it did then. But I'm just basing this off of the Wicked Cyclone that I rode back on my one visit I had to Six Flags New England, and I absolutely loved it. Some of these smaller RMC makeovers actually end up being better than the larger ones because it allows them to pack in more tighter elements. And if you look at Wicked Cyclone, how it weaves around the structure 3 laps around, so many various elements, it's an intense experience. It really exceeded my expectations. The next RMC on this list is Iron Rattler at Six Flags Fiesta Texas. You can tell I really love RMC. It is my favorite manufacturer, which is why you'll see so many of these on this list. What I love about this one is how it interacts with the quarry wall. Towards the end of the ride, it dives off the quarry to go into a tunnel, and it is one of the craziest airtime experiences in the world. It also has a twisted first drop, really catches you off guard. It's not the longest ride in the world, but it is still so good. And number 7 is Intimidator 305 at my home park, Kings Dominion. I've ridden this coaster more than any other in the world, and I still stand by my statement that this is the most intense roller coaster ever built. There's a reason why everyone grays out when they ride it. Some people have been known to black out, especially if you're dehydrated. When you start off over 300 feet in the air and then the rest of the ride is taken so low to the ground, you have so much speed and you're going around these crazy transitions. There's a reason why so many enthusiasts praise this ride. And number 6 is The Voyage at Holiday World. This probably gives the best night ride of all time. The ride goes so far back out into the woods, it feels like a wooden hypercoaster. It is ridiculous how tall this ride is, just how many elements it packs in. It's a ride that's kind of hard to marathon just because of how insane it is. But man, it takes my breath away every single time I ride it. At the number 5 spot is Fury 325, the ride that is considered by many the best coaster in the world. And when I first rode it, I said it was the greatest coaster I'd ever ridden. And I stood by that statement for a while. It's not currently my favorite, but I will say it is my favorite traditional steel coaster in the world. I think because it's become overrated in some people's minds, that people forget just how good the ride is. It is so easy to marathon, a front row experience on it. You hear that wind blaring in your ears, and in my opinion, I think it deserves all the praise it gets. At number 4 is a coaster that I have a soft spot for. I think it was one of the first coasters I rode that after I got off, I was shook. Like, it really just showed me how insane roller coasters can get. It's an Intamin prefabricated roller coaster. It's super smooth, has some of the greatest airtime in the world. And while it does some of the similar things that you can find on roller coasters by RMC, to me, there's just something about this ride that keeps me wanting to come back for more. Most of the time, it's the reason why I want to make a trip up to Great Adventure to do it. And when I do, I end up riding El Toro like a dozen times in one day. It's an epic experience, which is why it takes the number 4 spot. So now we're at our top 3. Number 3 is the coaster that I said was my favorite roller coaster I rode in Europe. It's Wildfire at Kolmarden in Sweden. When I visited, I only had one day to do this coaster, and I loved it so much that I said I'm going to ride this as many times as I possibly can because I don't know when I'm going to get back here. And so I rode it 18 times in just a few hours. And even then, that wasn't enough. I still wanted to keep going. And like Iron Rattler, this coaster really incorporates the surrounding rockwork, so this is a ride that really made the trip to Sweden alone worth it. At number 2 is the coaster that it took me so long to ride that the moment I finally got to ride it, it felt like I had just beaten my kryptonite or climbed Everest. Either way, it just made this huge accomplishment. And since then, I've ridden it almost 50 times and it is one of the most relentless roller coasters out there. That launch up the lift hill is just the beginning, because this is the fastest wood coaster in the world. And when you fly through those elements, you don't know what is going on, but let me tell you, that quad down going down the mountain, probably the best airtime sequence in the world. This ride is insane. I love it to death, which is why it's my favorite wood coaster I've ever ridden. But at number 1 is this new for 2018 coaster that just opened up at Cedar Point. It's Steel Vengeance. This is an RMC redo of Mean Streak. They took a terrible ride and transformed it into a work of art. There's a lot of hybrid coasters on this list, but this one is the tallest, the fastest, the longest. It also has the record of the most airtime moments on any coaster in the world. I think Cedar Point and RMC absolutely blew our socks off when they opened this thing. It is a remarkable ride, which is why, at the moment, it's my favorite roller coaster. Now, as I said, this list is constantly changing. I do not stick by this like it's holy scripture. I'm constantly shifting these things around, and at the rate I go about riding new and exciting roller coasters around the world, it probably won't be very long till this list changes again. But at the moment this video is being made, this is how I rank my top 25 favorite roller coasters. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I'm not expecting you to agree with it. All I hope is that you respect my opinion. If you'd like to find out more about some of these rides, again, please check out that coaster reviews playlist, and be sure to comment below, what are your favorite roller coasters? What are some of your bucket list rides that you hope to get on? And of course, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all next time.